For the first time in a long time, this year's anniversary of the EDSA People Power Revolution will not be observed as a national holiday. That was an executive decision. But it's a decision that seems to reflect an erosion in public support for EDSA. Is the spirit of EDSA still alive? Good evening. I'm John Nery, and you are in the public square. I've followed and reported on the work of social weather stations for over 2 decades. Over the years, they've conducted surveys on issues related to EDSA, to the Marcoses, and to democracy. We will explore these findings and discuss their meanings tonight in the company of Leo Laroza, the Director for Communication and IT of Social Weather Stations. Good evening, Leo, and thank you for joining us in the public square.
Good evening, John, and thank you for having me, and good evening to all your viewers.
I will start with what I think is the latest survey data you have on EDSA. I mean, you asked specific questions about EDSA. I think this was the December 2022 survey, right? What were the highlights of that particular set of questions?
This survey was conducted on December 10 to 14 of 2022. Mm-hmm. And in that survey, we asked 3 questions, actually, about EDSA. First, we asked about whether people think if the spirit of EDSA is still alive in every Filipino. Mm-hmm. And we followed up with a question asking them is it still important or not important to still commemorate People Power Revolution. Mm-hmm. And finally, we closed up with what's their opinion about how many of the promises of the EDSA People Power Revolution were fulfilled.
Okay.
And the highlights, there's a majority, okay? There's a majority, 62%, still thinking that the spirit of people power is still alive in every Filipino. Mm-hmm. And when it comes to importance, we have over half, 57%, saying it's still important that we commemorate the People Power Revolution.
Well, I just want to be clear. The still alive response, that's actually 2 answers, right? It's still alive and definitely still alive.
Yes, it's a combination of definitely still alive and still alive.
Okay.
So yeah.
So the same thing also with importance.
Not alive. The importance, yes, it's also a combination of still important, very important, and somewhat important. So it's an aggregation of those 2 positive.
Okay. Can I ask you, what's the difference in the survey design? Why did you make a distinction between the questions, is the spirit still alive, and is it worth commemorating?
Yeah, well, it's 2 concepts. First is what people think about their countrymen when it comes to the spirit. I mean, is it still with your kababayan? And that's how we phrased it. Sa inyong palagay, buhay pa po ba sa bawat Pilipino ang aral o ang spirit ng EDSA People Power Revolution? So that's the
ang aral o ang spirit.
Ang aral and spirit. So we're asking people's perception about their countrymen. And then the other question, which we think it's a different, it's measuring a different concept. Is it still important? And here we specifically for the respondent. Sa inyong palagay, importante pa ba o hindi na importante na gunitain ang EDSA People Power Revolution? So it's commemorating. And that's where we found 57% saying it's still important.
I think 17% said definitely not alive.
Oh, yes.
And I think 21% said definitely not important to commemorate anymore. Yes. I have a question. Are these respondents, 17, 21, necessarily pro-Marcos or pro-Duterte respondents?
Not at all. We don't have direct data answering that. We did not look into disaggregating this response and see if, what their leanings are. So yeah, it's a general perception, and that's the extreme end of the spectrum. These are those who, they feel it's not important anymore. So, but they're still important opinions.
You conducted this particular survey with this particular set of questions 6 months into the Marcos Jr. administration. How often do you ask questions like these in your surveys? And when is the next round?
Unfortunately, we have not been very regular when it comes to monitoring people power. Our questionnaire has limited space, and we devote most of that part into monitoring quality of life. But as I mentioned, we have an archive. That's we're very proud of. We're very proud of our archive, and we have questions about the EDSA People Power Revolution as early as 1995. That's asking people what their idea of people power is.
Okay.
And we also asked in year 2000, we asked how they celebrated or how they commemorated people power. And so that's how scarce or rare we run this question.
Was there any particular reason why you asked this set of questions again in December 2022? Was it prompted by the victory of Marcos Jr.? Our
survey agenda is formulated by we have an advisory body, and we have fellows contributing to the ideas, what questions to ask. And yes, I think that's triggered. I mean, that's maybe a fair question to ask if you're looking at EDSA as a symbol of that there's this one promise that you end Marcos dictatorship. And now we have a Marcos Jr. as president. Yes, I think that's a fair question to ask.
I'll get back to the third item, the third question that you asked in this particular set, maybe later.
Yes.
I wanted to talk about first the archives. I'm a heavy user of your archives. So for instance, if you go to sws.org.ph and just search EDSA, the very first thing that will pop up is this survey that you mentioned, right? December 2022, which I think came out in January 2023.
Before,
right?
Yeah.
That's right, yeah. But there have been other surveys. And while it's not as regular, I think it allows us to track. Let me rephrase that. Would it be fair to say that even though they were not regularly scheduled, because they took place over 30 plus years, we can use them to help track the evolution of of public opinion regarding EDSA, the Marcoses, people power, and so on?
Another limitation that we found here is that not only are they far apart, the questions were different.
Okay.
That's why it's also unfortunate that this is the first time we ask this kind of question, the one in December 2022, about is it important, is it still alive? We don't. This is a benchmark for us to see if it's degrading, if it's eroding. We need to do another one.
When will the next one be? Is it it's going to be an annual thing, or?
Oh, we hope to make it an annual thing. Our surveys are quarterly, and somewhere in that 4 surveys this year, we hope to field something like this again, maybe at the end of the year.
Okay, so just to be clear, this is not unusual, right? I mean, precisely because your questionnaire can get full. You rotate some of the questions. So, for instance, you have questions about public opinion on the Philippine position in the South China Sea / West Philippine Sea, but you don't ask that every quarter,
No.
right? So like there's a pace to some of the questions that you ask. There are some questions, I guess, that you ask all the time.
Oh yes, that would be our core indicators, focusing on the quality of life, changes in people's well-being, how were they losers or gainers, or are they optimistic or pessimistic in the coming year? So
And then during political season,
Oh.
you also ask questions about potential candidates, that sort of thing.
Well, that's subscriber driven.
I see.
As for us, the initiative to run voter preferences question would be
Client driven.
client driven, but on our part, as our own initiative, it's going to be when the final list comes out, when the final list of candidates comes out. That's the time we do our own survey, and we do. But early at this point, 2 years, 1 year before the election, it's all client driven, subscriber driven, and research driven. We have subscribers who want to test certain lists, certain names. They have their candidates. They have their pangbato or pinag-iisipan if they would support this or not. So the list or the voter preferences are completely designed by the client or the
So
subscriber.
it's possible for an organization, let's say a political party, to ask you to run a survey on EDSA,
Yes.
public opinion about EDSA
Yes.
more regularly. But will it make sense to run it every quarter?
Well, it depends.
Something
It depends.
about perspectives on.
Sometimes it's all about timing. Like right now, this is the first time we've, as you mentioned earlier, People Power celebration won't be a holiday anymore. Maybe that's a good time for us to monitor it because there's a major change. There's a major interruption or disruption in celebration of something that's been around for quite some time. So yes, we're glad that we ran the December 2022 question. If you repeat it, we'll see how this will affect, how this year will affect people's opinion. Will it erode people's idea that it's still alive, or will it, I don't know. We'll see.
You said the core indicators have to do with quality of life, etc. Is there any correlation between the quality of life findings over the last 30 plus years with national public opinion about EDSA? So for instance, we can go to the third question.
Yeah.
That was very revealing.
Yes.
I think something like 75% actually of respondents combined to say
Only a few.
None?
Yeah.
or only a few of the
Yeah.
promises were kept.
Yes.
Right? So 62% said it's still alive, the spirit's still alive. 57% said it's important to commemorate. But I think less than 20% said it was able to meet its promises.
You're right. People's well-being are strong indicators, are strong influencers of their opinion. And here year 2022 is just coming out of the terrible 2020 and 2021 pandemic. Self-rated poverty has just coming out of that catastrophic. We called it catastrophic. It's the first time we used that term for the year 2020, 2021. And 2022, we're just seeing a recovery, but not complete. So, quality of life, although it's recovering, it's not in the best of state in year 2022, and it's still trying to recover for the whole of 2023. So yes,
I mean, there's no direct
there's no direct
data that will tell us,
yeah, but
that will be the context.
that will be the context. That will be the context, and maybe after this, I can. That's a problem with us. We don't have enough time to mine the data and analyze it. We're busy preparing for the next survey, but we invite everyone to take a look at our data and see if really having a dismal quality of life would affect this. But that's the context of that time. Poverty is on a recovery, but still far from the pre-pandemic state. Gainers are still below the losers. Optimism is not that high, and joblessness is still recovering at that time. So when we ask the question about how much of the promises of the people power revolution was fulfilled, of course, a few and then almost none or none would be the dominant answer. Yeah. But yes, it would be nice if we can look at the data again and see in deeper detail how the dynamics of deprivation, for example, or hardship in life would affect their response to this.
Let's go back in time.
Yeah.
Before it became the SWS that we know. In May 1986, or 3 months after the EDSA revolution, the Ateneo SWS conducted a survey which found very bad ratings for Marcos. I think they asked 6 questions, including, did he favor cronies? And in May 1986, 73% of Filipinos said, his friends and cronies enriched themselves. Did you think Marcos was a liar? 60% said, yes, Marcos was a liar. Was he a defender of the poor? And 54% said no. And then I looked, again, exploring the archives, I found out that there was a comparison made a couple of years ago by a team of 4 scholars, including Drs. Rude and Tigno, comparing. Apparently, you had run this set of questions 4 times. October 1986, so a second time on the year of EDSA. Then October 1995, about 10 years later. And then 20 years later, 2016. And then June 2022. And it turns out that maybe 1995 was the year that you were able to record a turn in the public opinion fortunes of Marcos Sr. If I understood the paper of the 4 scholars correctly, they said that popular impressions of the old man Marcos were actually gaining in positivity or favorability, not only during the time of Duterte, who considered Marcos as his ideal president, or in the time of the son, Marcos Jr., but maybe in 1995. I don't have the details here, but I think the same questions were asked. So, for instance, the proportion of people, there's also a question about, do you think Marcos was a thief? And over time, over those 4 surveys, you could see the number of people saying Marcos was a thief really going down. How should we understand these 4 surveys conducted by SWS itself between 1986 and 2022? 2016.
Yeah. That paper by Dr. Rude, Dr. Tigno, Dr. Tucanes, and Mr. Vlad Licudine, the late Vlad Licudine. Yes, they tackled how public opinion changed, and it saw a sort of change of heart. Yeah, and those findings and supported by other survey data that we have, not just on Marcos but with other former presidents. We know that the Filipino people, are a very forgiving lot. And we saw it happen not just on that paper about Ferdinand Marcos, but also with the trust ratings that we do with former presidents. And that best applies to former President Joseph Estrada. We've continued asking, do you trust or distrust Joseph Estrada? It's not about asking about his role or performance as a president. It's just asking people about him as a person. And he really redeemed himself in terms of, from a negative trust rating and then to a positive as a private individual person. So that paper about the Marcos, I think if I remember correctly, the title was "They Never Left."
That's right.
They never left.
That's right.
And it showed, people changed their hearts. They get generous with their perception of a person, especially if it's been a long time ago. And but of course, the data will just show you the feelings that they have at a particular time. But we don't have data about how they came about, what were the influences, what happened, and it's always part of the analysis that you look at the context. We look at people's consumption of information, how they get it, and what are those informations. But unfortunately, we don't have a really solid data. We want to look into what brought about this change of heart. Is it media? Is it social media? But if you remember, social media
was not a factor in 1995.
In 1995, yes. But if we ask people, and then in a later date, these people, this new batch of respondents, they're the ones exposed to a different kind of information.
That's right.
And these are the social, I don't know, maybe the news, maybe the... So yeah, we're not setting aside the possibility that there must be a certain form of information, a certain form of message that people had to get this much change over time.
Can I test a theory by you? I've always thought that Marcos money and organized disinformation helped pave the way for the victory of President Marcos Jr. And my favorite bits of data would be Marcos Jr.'s run for the Senate in 1995 and his second run for the Senate in 2010. He lost badly in 1995, less than 10 years after their ouster. But in 2010, he breezed into the Senate. So, and I would always point to that 15-year period and say, because that's when, that's when they started disinformation in 2009 and so on and so forth. However, going through the data, preparing for this particular episode, it struck me that maybe precisely because we're a forgiving people, the mere fact that the Marcoses took part in national elections was already a way of re-legitimizing them. So in 1992, Imelda ran for president. She lost, I think placed fourth. If she had joined forces with Danding Coangco, perhaps they would have won. In 1995, Bongbong Marcos ran for the Senate, lost, but still gained something like twice the number of votes as his mother did running for president. I'm not going to ask you to speculate. Maybe I should rephrase my question. How can I test this hypothesis? If you give me access to your data from 1986 and so on, how do I test that hypothesis that the mere fact of participating in elections helps re-legitimize the Marcoses?
For one, from our data, we know that elections are a big deal to the Filipino people. People want to be part of it. Participation or voting participation is very high. And yes, you're right. Having or seeing the Marcos name in the ballot is already a powerful signal to anyone at all.
Yeah.
Whether you're pro or anti, which leads me to recall what I was told before when it comes to campaigning. When someone change their perception from negative to positive, the theory there is that information or the campaign you see from media, they're not there to completely turn you around. They're just there to reinforce what you have in your heart or what you have in your mind. That's why from the paper by Dr. Rud and others, they never left. They never left. It's been, sometimes when depending on the time period a survey was conducted, a negative feeling, and then through time it would change. Changing opinion is not, it doesn't come from being entirely black to white.
Okay.
There's always been somewhere in between, even before. So yeah, I forgot what my point is, but the best way to look at it is really when we look at our archives, is really to look at the trust rating. The trust is how people look at a person, regardless of their position, regardless of their past performances. It's really just,
And from your experience and from the data, what are the elements that create trust? So you have a coup plotter, an unsuccessful coup plotter like Gringo Hanasan, who wins national elections because he resonates with a certain majority of voters. No? There is some trust with him, even though he's tried to stage a coup more than once, right? So the same thing also, as you pointed out, with former President Erap.
Yes.
I think he went down immediately after EDSA DOS,
Yes.
but then rather relatively recovered, right? What would be the elements of trust for a politician?
That's a very hard question to answer because every person has a different way of perceiving someone.
Is it just presence, for instance? Like you keep seeing that person.
Oh yes.
Laman ng balita, as they say.
Yes. Awareness. Awareness is one of the biggest factors in vote conversion. The more people know you, regardless of how they know you, you have a better chance of getting voted. It's the same with trust. If you're still in the news, if you're still, regardless of what message or what tone a particular news is, as long as your name is recognizable, you have a big chance of getting a positive result in terms of how people would process your name. That's the reason why, yes, like Echo Platter, like Hunasan, or someone like Senator
Convicted plunderer like Estrada.
or Senator Trillanes, who
That's
made
right.
the news by ramming a armored vehicle to a hotel. So those things, yes, as long as people recall your name, the chances of you getting a vote is very high. We've run correlations on this. We've run statistical tests, and awareness is your number one ally.
What about office? The mere fact that you hold an office.
That's so true.
There's like a halo effect.
Yes, any former president who won a convincing election is ensured a huge social capital. You can see this in President Noynoy, in President Duterte, and even President Marcos Jr. Social capital was earned the moment they won an election convincingly. So the same thing with former President Estrada. He won the election quite convincingly, and that stayed with the people, even if the circumstances of how he got removed from office, even that. But then through time, it sticks to the people as long as they remember, and he will be remembered.
Is it okay? So that would be the first two factors. Would the spirit of the times also be a factor, like the context? I mean, after Cory Aquino died in 2009, all of a sudden, Noynoy Aquino became like the plurality choice for president. Maybe that would be the context. Or to bring it to closer to our time, Laila de Lima won a Senate seat with something like 14 million votes in 2016. But today, I think her ratings would be dismal because she's been the object of targeted disinformation for 6-7 years. How can she recover? Are her low ratings a reflection of the sign of the times? Like there's just more people favoring Duterte and Marcos. And if that were the case, how can she recover?
You're absolutely right about the negative ratings. It's really the sign of the times. Having a negative rating can be a fact of life for a certain person. Like if we look at former President Arroyo, she governed the Philippines having a very negative performance rating, but she came out fine. And actually, I don't remember the last trust rating we had for her, but it's really not as bad as before. So yes, it depends, huh? How things will proceed for a certain personality. Like she mentioned Senator De Lima. Coming from that kind of controversy to something that people will relate to in the end, it's a matter of really finding out how people see her. We don't have the data, by the way, to see how people trust her or distrust her, but we can imagine it's not favorable because of the nature of what people hear about her. But yes, I will go back to that fact that people are forgiving, and it all depends on how they proceed with their own public image, the things they do. So There's always hope. There's always hope for any individual.
I want to refer to another set of surveys that SWS has done. I think it's for the Asian Barometer on democracy. I happened to share the stage in 2018 with your chairman emeritus, Mahar Mangahas, when he spoke about a consistent support for democracy. And I think he referenced 4 surveys from 2002, 2005, 2010, and 2014. And then he gave the talk in 2018. And he showed that on the most important questions, like would you favor shutting down parliament and having a strong leader, a large majority, 60+% of Filipinos said no. They don't want that kind of close Congress and have a strong leader. And it held in that period, over that period from 2002 to 2014. And there were other questions. I want to ask, can we relate the findings there to people's perceptions about EDSA or people power or the Marcoses? How do we make sense of this second set of data?
Well, satisfaction with democracy, we've not seen it falter at all. Even during President Duterte's time, it stayed high, and preference for a democratic government is also, it outnumbered those who would favor authoritarian. It has a level different. It has a level of its own, and it's not affected by the kind of leader or the kind of situation that's happening.
So I just want to be clear. Democracy as a survey topic is not a proxy for, let's say, EDSA.
No.
Or vice versa.
No, it's not. And we believe that it stayed that way. It satisfaction is still very high, and it's not fluctuating at all. It's because we believe people think that if democracy is a vehicle, if it's not running well, you don't replace it. You just try to fix it. But completely changing it into something else is out of the question. So yeah, but it's not something that we would relate to people power celebration. Yeah.
Have you ever probed public opinion about the meaning of democracy? Like, is going to elections every 3 years
oh yeah,
a measure of democracy enough for people to say I'm satisfied?
We did, but I don't recall the exact figures. But yes, you're right. Among the top responses, there would be their ability to go out and cast a vote. That's the meaning of democracy. To be heard, to have freedom of speech. So those concepts, and which is why I also think that that's how important election is to every Filipino. They want to hold on to their ability to do something, to be able to do something, and even if it's just one vote, they're not going to give that up.
I mean, that's something that's really clear from decades of survey work, right?
Yes.
That we take our election seriously.
Yes,
right?
yes, and it's
even though some people say, "Oh, well, there's vote buying, there's whatever." We all take it seriously.
We take it seriously.
We go to the polls in high numbers,
and the effect of an election result will depend how they look at the leader, which is why I would, we can recall that Gloria Arroyo, she has a very different circumstance in coming to power, and she never had a honeymoon. She never had a honeymoon. First few quarters of her administration, and she went below the red line. She's negative. She governed the country below the red line. But that's just it. I mean, that's why questions about amending the Constitution, if it's going to affect the people's ability to exercise their right to vote or to be part of a process, then you're having a hard time pushing that.
That particular issue, I was not able to study. What is Philippine public opinion regarding changing the Constitution?
We asked this question early 2023, and if I remember correctly, we asked about whether it's a good time right now, during the first part of 2023, to change the Constitution, and we got a split opinion. Some say it's not, some say it's time. But if we just go ahead and test a few ideas, what particular parts of the Constitution are you amenable to changing? And we tested several concepts, like reducing the foreign ownership of businesses, and that's the most acceptable to them. Anything related to reducing foreign participation in key economic and economic activities.
Reducing or increasing?
Reducing. Ownership, investments, what else? Those, So it's reducing foreign participation, foreign ownership. What else?
Interesting.
Yeah. I don't have, I wish I have the whole number, but those are the ideas. But if we ask people how they rate their knowledge about the Philippine Constitution, it's unfortunately very low. Only a very few would say they have good knowledge about the Constitution. The majority would just say they have partial but sufficient or none at all. So changing the Constitution would have to be, something that had to be packaged in such a way that people would really understand. We tried asking in an open end without prompting, what would you want to change in the Constitution? And what we got were responses like reduce poverty, lower the price of basic commodities. Those were the top answers. It has nothing to do with the Constitution. It's really, So any attempt to push constitutional amendment, it has to be, come with a lot of information for the sake of, informing the public.
At the start of this program, I mentioned, I referred to what I said was the erosion of public support for EDSA. Based on SWS survey data, would that be a fair characterization of what has happened to public support, or public support, or maybe erosion in looking at EDSA as important to remember and so on? But the erosion in favorability, would that be an accurate term to use?
Well, we need to compare from point A to point B in terms of time to see if erosion would be the right term. But even if we have this just one snapshot, it could go either way. We see that when it comes to the promises, what people think about the promises of people power revolution, it's not a pretty picture. It's being questioned, and economic deprivation has something to do with it. if people feel poor or if they are going through hardship, they can't be generous with how they feel about things. And yes, people power EDSA is definitely something. We'll see. We'll see. For us to be able to use erosion or gain support or probably grow, we need to have more data points
More
on
data
this.
points, yeah.
Yes.
Well, here's another data point, but it's not directly related. I just remember that in 1999, I guess part of the turn of millennium surveys that you ran, you asked the question, what is the most important historical event
Yeah.
for the Philippines? I think you gave 14 choices. And the top number one was EDSA People Power Revolution.
There you go.
It was just a plurality, something like 27%. I wonder if you were to ask that today, not only what rating EDSA would get, but which one would be number one?
Yeah, that would be a great question to repeat. But that alone, for example, that question was fielded in such a way that there's no prompt. You just rely on respondent. For that to come up as top of the list, that's already saying a lot, and which is why when we saw the data that it's still important, 57% saying it's important, and we look at the demographics, and we saw that the younger group were more supportive of the idea that people power commemoration is still very important. So that tells us these are the young respondents. These are the next generation. 71% of them say it's important as compared to 56, 55, 59 among the older
71% of
the 18 to 24-year-olds. So that's a lot.
Okay.
Yeah. Which is why this
that is an interesting data point.
that's
The younger ones?
the younger ones are the more supportive of commemorating people power revolution. So this is something that we can look forward to in the future. These are the kids, youngsters that.
That is interesting. I mean, it's possible that it's because during their school years, Feb 25 was always a holiday, right? And almost always a holiday. So they saw it as important because it was part of their regular school calendar. But that's a good place to start.
Yeah.
Leo, I have a lot more questions, but we're running long. I just want to ask maybe something about the body politic. No? So obviously we have changed in that we've grown, right? In 1986, I don't know how many Filipinos, what our population was then, I don't know, 60 million or something. Now we were 110 or something. In what way has the body politics changed between 1986 and 2022 in ways that affected public opinion about events like EDSA or martial law?
Body
Can you speak?
politics.
Yeah, the pool of adult Filipinos who form from which you get your survey respondents. So obviously, some of them have moved on, some of them have passed away, some of them have, it's grown, right? Since 1986,
Yes,
it's been 30 plus years. In what meaningful way has that pool of potential survey respondents changed? We mentioned earlier social media.
Yes.
Maybe we can begin with that. Can you talk about a difference in the way public opinion is formed because of social media technology?
If we look at 1995, you'll find that the number one source of information would be television and traditional media. But if you look at the data now, following radio, guess what? Facebook. Facebook is the second most used source of information.
But after radio?
After radio. So that's something new to us. It's been like that over the past give or take 5 years.
What happened to television? Where is it now?
It's after Facebook.
It's the third.
It's the third. So, given that kind of environment that we are, when news, not only are news fast, but they're also easily modified. They can be. We have deep fakes. We have
That's right.
a lot of fake news, and we're not even probably close to defining the scope of fake news. That's the environment that we are now, and that's the environment that our respondents are in now. It's our aspiration to be able to study that phenomenon, phenomenon of changing hearts, that phenomenon of changing perception. We will never look at respondents as something contaminated or tainted. It's all a process of how they were cultivated that way. So
even if the source of information is actually organized disinformation campaigns, you don't look at the respondents as tainted.
Yes.
That's what they think, right?
That's our
Yes.
We always value our respondents, and they're not tainted. They came to that state, with what's happening around them. But we want to have a solid data on that, and that's what we're working on.
In an age of organized disinformation, how do you account for it when understanding public opinion? How do you, or should you, discount it? I'm just trying to understand. Yes, it's what the public thinks. So whether their sources of information are legitimate or not, it's what they think, right? It's what we think. That's public opinion. Even then, I would like to know, so what can be done about public opinion that looks like to have been formed through disinformation? I'll give you one specific example. I think since 2012, or maybe even earlier, Philippine public opinion on the West Philippine Sea has been very consistent, right? Very supportive of government efforts, have always asked for a more aggressive, more assertive stance against China. It's always been like that. But you and I know that there's ongoing disinformation operations, right? Targeting Filipinos and so on. What if 5 years from now, that campaign turns out to have been effective, and now public opinion in the Philippines is now in favor of the China position, right? How do we understand the survey findings then, when we realize that's the effect of organized disinformation?
Surveys are limited, and there should be a better instrument to measure that. And surveys it can give you a general picture, but it might fall short of really understanding the nature of that process, of the whole process, how the respondent came to be, and which is why it should be supported by other methods, qualitative interviews, and of course, really having a solid data on what's fake out there, how much is fake out there, and how much of that fake is reaching a person. We don't have that. We don't have that kind of information. That would be great if we have that information and then we plot it versus change in opinion over time, that would be a great source of data if that data can be collected.
Wow, we started with EDSA and we ended up maybe inevitably with disinformation. But I do want to go back to the point that you raised, that public opinion, no matter its source, should be respected. I mean, that's what the people think. So we have to find a way to wrestle with that. I would like to thank you, Leo Laroza of Social Weather Stations. This has been a really deep dive into the data and very highly informative. Thank you. And all the best to the SWS survey review tomorrow.
Yes, thank you. The survey review is, I would like to do a plug. Yes, it's an annual event that we do, telling the story of the Filipino people as seen through surveys. And that would be tomorrow at 8 a.m., 10 o'clock. Yeah.
Again, thank you.
Thank you very much.
That's it for us tonight. The next step for engaged citizens, as always, is to take a more active part in rebuilding our democracy. See you in the public square. This is John Nery. Thank you and good night.